Hey guys, welcome to this new video. In today's video, I have with me Thibaut. Thibaut used to live for more than 13 years in Asia. He's been settling down in Phnom Penh. He used to own a bar in the center of Phnom Penh. Then he relocated to Kon Tum, that this is a very tiny city in the central Vietnam. He was an English teacher. He bought a land in Vietnam. I mean, he has plenty of experience to share today. So I'm very happy to have Thibaut on the show to share for you guys about the main differences he observed between Cambodia and Vietnam. Thanks, Thibaut, to join me today to discuss about your experience living in Southeast Asia. Can you start by introducing your journey across Asia and especially in those two different cities?
Thank you to host me, Guillaume. I'm very happy also to share on your YouTube channel. I'm following it from the beginning. A couple of years ago, I was one of your first subscribers, and I was commenting a lot about your valuable videos that you provided for those years. Yes, I have a little experience of Asia. I've been traveling it for 2 years, from 2008 to 2010, a little while ago now, around Southeast Asia, China, Russia, Japan. But the part I loved the most was Southeast Asia and Cambodia and Vietnam. I had a bar in Cambodia from 2010 to 2015. It was a absinthe bar on the infamous Street 51, Street Pasteur. And I had a very good time over there. Then during that time, I met my wife, and we had the second child coming in 2015. Then we decided to move to the countryside where she is from, Kon Tum, as you say. That was the reason why we went there, to raise our children in the countryside, the tropical countryside of Vietnam, where I stayed for 6 years. And I used to be an English teacher, even with my terrible French accent. I used to train students from middle school and high school over there for night classes. And we decided to come back in France in June 2021, as COVID started to hit Vietnam hard. But I'm pretty sure we can talk about it later.
I would like first to get your vision and then your thoughts about Cambodia versus Vietnam, and the main differences that you observe while living there compared to living in Vietnam.
What I have to say is I'm not an expert in any way about Asia. I'm just an average dude which happened to live there for a while. I can just share my experience over there for those who wants to learn more about that time, because things are evolving a lot in Asia, and my experience is maybe a little bit outdated now. But the main differences between Cambodia and Vietnam, I would say, the first one is development. Cambodia is less developed than Vietnam, which is good in some ways. But if you want to start a small business and your target is the middle class in Cambodia, you have to know that the middle class Cambodia is quite narrow. There are not so many people, and in Vietnam, you will touch much more people, and the middle class over there is much more developed, as the country is more developed also. When I opened my bar in Cambodia, I didn't have to register at the Commerce Ministry. I didn't have to have a working permit. I just had my working visa, which was available for 1 year. Then I renovated a house that I rented. I renovated it, I put a bar inside, I made the new tiles, whatever, made the deco, opened the gate, and sell some beers and some absinthe with no alcohol license or whatever. And I think this is not really the case anymore, because that I know that now you have to register, you have to have the working permit. Things have evolved a lot in that way. But in Vietnam, for instance, the way you can open a bar, even at that time, was much more difficult, with much more paperwork with the administration than compared to Cambodia. There are also differences between the mood between Cambodia and Vietnam. The Vietnamese are maybe a little bit less friendly at first sight compared to the Cambodians, which looks more open and smiley in the first interactions. But then I know this is some kind of stereotype, but there is something true, in my opinion, about it, that in a longer friendship, the Vietnamese will be more sincere. Yes, the Khmers are more smiley, the Vietnamese are maybe less smiley at first sight, but more sincere in the long terms. We can talk about the food also. The Vietnamese food is much better, much more diverse. I love the proc in Cambodia, the smelly, stinky fish sauce. I don't know if you know it. Except for that, yeah, the diversity of food in Cambodia is not as good as the Vietnamese one, which is one of the top of Asia. What can I say? I don't understand why the Vietnamese like to sit on children chairs with the tables on the floor. They are the only ones in Asia who are doing that. You always stuck with your knees somewhere. I don't understand, but it's a cultural way they seem to be attached with, and boy, it's a part of it.
Another item, I guess, is about the diversity. You mentioned it a bit, that in terms of food, in terms of landscape as well, just because Vietnam is bigger than Cambodia. Can you develop this a
Yeah.
little bit?
There's a huge difference between north and south. You have the Tonkin Alps, Tapa, more than 3,000 meters high, the peaks over there, the Fansipan. You have the rice paddy on the coast. My wife was from the Central Islands where they grow coffee. And you have Dalat also, which is the vegetable garden of Southeast Asia. For sure, Cambodia has less diversity. There is the Tonle Sap and this unique system of the Mekong feeding it and then the lake going back to the river. Yeah, Cambodia is more flat, except if you take the cardamom a little bit, but which is not very accessible even nowadays. But north of Sihanoukville, which are the mountains of Cambodia, and you have a little bit of islands also between Ratanakiri and Modulkiri, but otherwise, yeah, Cambodia is mainly a plain with the hills that you find somehow. And Vietnam is much bigger. If you look at the internet, the true size, and you put Vietnam in Europe, you will see that from north to south of Vietnam, you will reach from Dunkerque to Algiers in crossing the Mediterranean Sea. It's really immense. And something that when you look at the map, you see, it's okay. No, it's nearly 2,000 kilometers long. And when the infrastructure and especially the roads are really improved since I used them nearly 15 years ago, the Highway 1 from Saigon to Da Nang and Hanoi has become real highway when it was just a city road 15 years ago. The development and the speed of it is really impressive. And the Cambodians also have achieved with the motorway between Phnom Penh to Sihanouk or to Kampong Cham, even with the help, of course, of the Chinese. It's something really impressive, as I say.
So it's true, actually, Thibaut, that in terms of diversity between the two countries, we can observe major differences such as education, infrastructure, and even in the working environment. And actually, because you used to run a business in Cambodia and you also invested in Vietnam, I would like to have your thoughts about the major differences that you observed in terms of business spirit. How was it to open a bar in Phnom Penh versus when you came back to Vietnam? You also had to put money over there, so they had some banking legislation, I guess, that you had to face. So how was the experience dealing between Cambodia and Vietnam?
As I said, when I opened my bar, there were no rules. I open when I want. I sell what I want. I close when I want. You just have to deal with your neighbors. If your neighbors are not complaining, and don't worry, they are used to noise. That was one of the reasons why I also wanted to open my bar in Cambodia, because it was more friendly for foreigners over there than Vietnam. Less paperwork. In any ways, it was more welcoming. And I think it's still the case nowadays. The Vietnamese administration is somehow much more reserved and giving a less welcoming feeling for foreigners than the one you can find in Cambodia. For example, I didn't have any kind of problem to open my bank account in Phnom Penh. One of the good things also is the currency, and I was not obliged to have a little bit of money for the construction to start my business. So I used to have my money in dollar, something which is quite interesting when your money was in euro. Those currencies are something accepted all around the world. The Cambodian riel and the Vietnamese dong are accepted just in those two countries. That was one of the reasons why also I opened my bar in Cambodia, with the banking system quite welcoming. Then when I moved to Vietnam, I was thinking keeping my money in Cambodia, but then I felt that I wanted to be close to it also, something valuable. So I transferred my money to the Vietcom Bank in Kon Tum, and there were no problem at the beginning. They were also providing a possibility to have a bank account in dollar, which I did at the beginning. Then I realized that was not really necessary in Vietnam, as they don't really use the dollar like in Cambodia. But then after 2 or 3 years, I don't remember exactly, they told me that they didn't accept the fact that I had my money on my name, as I was a foreigner, saying that it was a new regulation from the government, something that I still don't understand today. So I decided that the Vietcom Bank was not very friendly to me, and I decided to take my money to Vietin Bank, which said to me that there were no problem. And then I moved my money over there, and 1 week later, I got that, Mister, is a problem. You can have that money on your name, but we can make a solution. As you are married to a Vietnamese woman, you can give your money to your wife, and nothing will be problematic anymore, which I did, because I was stuck. What do I do? I'm still living in Vietnam. I have my money here. Now my money is still over there. And I'm not unhappy with that, because when you look at the banking system here in Europe, the inflation rate, with our government lying all the time, saying, no, it's 6%. I buy my camembert at the supermarket, it's more than 6% increase. Within the last year, it was from 180 to 240. Make your calculation. It's not 6% increase. And you see that the UBS in Switzerland was on the verge of collapsing. Nothing is safe in that world, but I still trust in the future of Southeast Asia. I keep my savings over there.
Actually, in terms of banking, the legislation is changing very fast in Vietnam, even during the last year, because the visa policy changed a lot. Sometimes you used to own a bank account in Vietnam, and now you are not able to cash your money out or transfer your money overseas, or you have very limited use of your bank account, just because policy changed a lot. And also on the banking side, they got more and more regulation. So it's something that in Vietnam, it may be a pain point that the country is having. And actually, Thibaut, now I would like you to focus a bit more about the investment that you did in Vietnam. I know that you bought land a couple of years ago. So can you please share us what was the location, what was the profits that you generated, as well as the downside and things that foreigner may know if I wanna buy properties in Vietnam?
In fact, actually, it was during my stay in Cambodia that I bought a land in Kon Tum. In our mind at that time, it was first a little investment, because we know the market is still up in Vietnam, in Cambodia as well. The real estate market is still green. All the lights are green, except for the condominiums in Phnom Penh. It's another problem. So yes, I decided to buy a small land for me and my wife at that time. It was a little investment, around $10,000. I don't remember how big it was, but it was like 1,500 square meters or something like that in Kon Tum. And the point was to maybe build a house over there for when we stayed to visit the family, maybe when we got retired in the long term. But so I bought that land. That was not so complicated, except that the owners didn't have the famous red paper, the one that you made some videos about before, the one that says that this is your land, this is where it is, how long, and stuff like that. So they had to make that paper, then we had to put that paper on our name. There is a little bit of administration on it. We kept that land for 3 years around, and we changed our mind. My wife didn't really want to spend retirement days over there. She didn't want to really care about that land, which was unbuilt. Nobody in our family, she has brothers, wanted to really care about it because it was not theirs. So we had a piece of land which cost money to me, and we don't do anything with it. So we decided to sell it, and I sold it for profit. I made with those 3 years something like 20%, which is not so bad. You have to compare it also with the inflation in Vietnam, which is not what used to be in Europe, around 2%. The inflation rate in Vietnam is around 8 or something like that. You could tell small, but it as you are still living there. But yes, we sold it in cash. Also, the people come to the house with cash money. The way they do till today, you buy a house, a land, a car with cash money. My grandfather used to tell me that they did like that in the 60s or in the 70s in France. They still do it like that in Southeast Asia nowadays. We sold it also because I didn't trust much the way the government is dealing with the land. Of course, you know that you don't really own the land in Vietnam. It's a communist country. You took all the land and you just have for 99 years the use of the land. And also, we were not sure about the projects that they wanted to do. Kontum especially is developing a lot also, even if it's quite remote. They have a project for the city. And you never know when they will want to enlarge the road in front of you, grab a piece of land over there, make a new road over here. Yes, we decided to sell it, but in fact, we made a little profit. And that experience was good to see how it works. You talked about it in your video about your land in the Mekong Delta. That was quite the same. Didn't build on it. Yes, this is my experience about it.
Okay, thank you, Thibaut. It's true that when you buy land in Vietnam, but not only, it can be in all Southeast Asian countries, you have to cope with what is the regulation. And here, because things are changing very fast, we are never sure about what we really buy, what we really own, etc. So it's always better to go with locals that have friends. It's even better if you are married or people who have local connections, so they can really be able to tell you what's the value of this land, what are the projects around, is there any infrastructure that are currently being built, etc. So you are really sure about what you are buying. I have stories of people buying lands in Phu Quoc, and actually they were not even sure which piece of land they were owning. And finally, after years, they realized that they thought they were in front of the beach, and finally the land was located in the middle of the island. So things like that can happen. And then some areas in Vietnam, such as Bao Loc, in Dalat as well. So I guess in Kontum, it may come also in a couple of years, that there will be a lot of speculations. It's going to attract a lot of people from the major cities like Da Nang, Ho Chi Minh City, Hanoi, going there to speculate, going there to buy lands. And of course, it's going to bring as well scam and then over speculation in some areas. So you always have to be very, very aware about that and do your own due diligence if you are considering such investments. There are obviously a lot of opportunities into doing such land investment, but it comes as well with a lot of risk. So again, make sure that you are properly studying the project. And if there are such cases like Thibaut mentioned, like they can come and take over part of your land, it does happen in Vietnam. They're going to, for instance, build up the road and going to take 1, 2, 3, 4 meters on your land, and they're going to compensate you. But again, you need to have connections with locals to make sure that the price that they're going to compensate you is fair. And there are still cases that are spread in the news that sometimes when the land has been bought by a property developer, sometimes the compensation is not as high as what the people were expecting.
That experience was also under the name of my wife, because as I mentioned, it's only $10,000. And only because this is a small business when you compare to what can happen in Vietnam. And in those conditions, it's not profitable to open a company which they can buy also lands in their name. But the size of the projects is not the same as what I did or what, as I mentioned in your video, what you did. This is too small to open a company. And yes, that was under the name of my wife.
So Thibaut really emphasized that either you are married and then you can use that person as a nominee, either you need to have some local connections, people that you trust living in those towns. They will have connection with the notary, with the administration, etc., to make all the papers go through. And then you still have the options of setting up a company. But obviously, for a land that will worth 10,000, 20, 30,000 US dollar, it will be a pain in the ass to set up a company just to have land use rights on a specific property in Vietnam. Thanks again, Thibaut, for your thought today. I'm sure it's going to bring some good perspective and real experience from someone who has been living in Vietnam for more than 13 years, living in Phnom Penh, doing business over there, as well as in Kon Tum, that is not very well known among the expat and foreigner community. I was very happy to have you today to discuss about that.
Thank you very much, Guillaume. And if you have some questions, I will be open to any questions you have in the comment section for a week or two.
Okay, thanks again, Thibaut, and I see you in the next video.
Thank you.
Bye, Thibaut.
Down and I'ma get it right, dead on sight like